Welcome to another episode of Whiskey Neat, spirited conversations with interesting people. I'm your host, Kristopher Hart. This week's episode was another first for the show. We had on an Indian whiskey. Amrut Distillery in India put Indian whiskey on the map, definitively put Indian whiskey on the map. And now, between them and Paul John, some of the best whiskey in the world is coming out of India. And I could not be happier about it. Jane Campbell joins us. She and Ashok Chokalingam. Ashok is the assistant distiller with Amrut and next in line to take over as master distiller. They come all the way. They're on a little bit of a U.S. tour right now. They hit Dallas and Austin over the past few days. Now they're in Houston, and they're leaving tomorrow. It was a very short-lived but beautiful romance. He brought in some of, no pun intended a few times, the Spectrum. And if you are familiar with Amrut Spectrum, you'd realize how ridiculous that pun is. But they brought in everything that they carry pretty much. And we started with they started in rum. And then they moved on to single malts, cask strength single malts, peated single malts. They cover the gamut of potential whiskeys, and we talk a little bit about the Spectrum, another one that they actually aged Indian orange peels in a sherry barrel for 2 years. It was just phenomenal. I feel kind of gluttonous every week because it feels almost like I'm really doing this for me, that I'm just sitting here and nerding out as an average consumer myself that's not super familiar with every little intricate detail of what they have. And it was so much fun. So without further ado, Ashok Chokalingam and Jane Campbell from Amrut Distillery. Cheers. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I haven't thanked you yet. And Jane, absolutely. We've been talking for quite some time now, playing phone tag more than anything. Let's go ahead and start drinking. I'm ready to talk about it. You guys were probably and this is not to say that no one else is doing good things, but Amrut's probably the one that put Indian whiskey on the map, if I'm not mistaken. You guys have been doing it better and longer than anyone else.
Definitely. We are the first one to start. And when you are a leader, you have to maintain your pole position. So we got to basically think outside the box. And that's why all these expressions that we are releasing of late is very innovative.
Yeah.
Being innovative is one thing, but the whiskey has to speak for itself.
Sure.
So I think we are basically ticking all the boxes, right?
Well, I wouldn't disagree with you. I mentioned this before the show, but the one bottle that got away from me in the past 2 years was the Spectrum.
Yeah.
And I hear there's a bit of a story behind that.
Yeah,
I wanted to hear
huge story behind that.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm all ears.
Ashok's very humble about it, but he is responsible for the Spectrum.
Oh, really? Your baby?
Yes, it is my baby.
His innovation.
Sure. I brought a little, just in case, little dump glass there if we need to. Oh, it smells great. Yeah, so there's a small mom and pop store in Pasadena that I used to frequent for Dusties, some old bottles that have been sitting around that aren't around anymore. And that's the first time I picked up the Fusion. They've got the older Fusion bottling. And when you get into single malts, if that's where you start, particularly, you love to try new things. And Amrut was the first Indian whiskey I've ever had. And the moment I found out you were going to be in town, I was so happy to get you on. So this was, it's kismet.
Yeah.
Kismet. Yeah. Well, cheers.
Yes.
I think I also read somewhere that I think Indians drink more whiskey than anyone else in the world. Is that right?
That's true.
The consumption is astronomical compared to... And listen, I'm putting forth my best effort to compete, but I need a little help because apparently you guys are killing it.
Whiskey per capita, India is the highest in the world. Annual consumption of whiskey alone is about 350 million cases.
350 million cases of whiskey.
So for every adult, is that at least one case of whiskey a year? And those are 12 packs, by the way, not 6
it's
packs.
all 9-liter cases.
Oh, so. 12 packs.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I can't even wrap my head around that number. It's a tremendous, and we go through, my wife and I, we drink quite a bit because there's so much out there now. I mean, the no pun intended, but the spectrum of whiskey out there is pretty vast. So where did the concept come from, the spectrum? Like, where did you?
I have been seeing the market when I go around. I do notice that people have, for example, used French oak for maturation and American oak for maturation, and then often basically blended together to create a profile. Then I was thinking, why nobody is trying to create a barrel with multiple woods in terms of.
Yeah, why is it all French oak and American oak?
It's only, I mean, again, you haven't seen anybody using multiple woods in a single barrel. Now, what I'm trying to tell you is, suppose if you make a barrel which comprising of both American and French oak inside the barrel, and you mature a whiskey in it, and then you mature a whiskey in a bourbon barrel or a new American oak barrel and a new French oak barrel, and you blend both of them, you compare, it will not be the same. Because when you have stitched two different woods together and then make it as a part of the maturation, the flavor impact on that is going to be quite different.
Sure.
So that is what I was thinking. Then we have to basically travel further. Instead of two different woods, I wanted to go for 5.
So one barrel, 5 different wood types.
Wood type in a single barrel, which it has never happened in the 400 years of whiskey making.
Sure.
Nobody has ever thought about it.
Turned out great, by the way.
Yeah.
People went nuts. I mean, it disappeared immediately.
That's right. I mean, the problem we have had in the initial stage of the concept itself was, how do you make a barrel with 5 different woods? Because, for example, American oak has to be charred for you to basically crack open the lignin structure of the wood and leach the caramel and vanillin into the whiskey.
Sure.
And you can't do the same on a French oak because French oak and in European
you can't
oak,
treat it the same.
Exactly. European oak and French oak got 10 times more tannin than the American oak. So you cannot basically char them.
You can't char this, yeah.
Yeah, so that's why normally French oaks are toasted. So the toasting temperature may be like about 150 degrees Celsius, and charring will be much, much, much higher. So you cannot mix both the woods and then, char it or toast
all
it
at the same.
Yeah, all at the same
so
time.
So did you do it separate?
Yeah, that's what we did. So I went to my cooperage and I told them that I wanted to build a barrel like that. And that guy said, I've been running the cooperage for the last 45 years and nobody has ever asked me to do something like this.
It sounds like you're being difficult.
Yeah, very difficult. Yeah. And how do we do it? So then we did a bit of brainstorming. And then we came up with an idea of where we first created an American oak barrel with a char 3, put it aside. Then we created a French oak barrel with a toasting on it. Then the third one was a Spanish oak with a very light toast on it. Then we cut Pedro sherry butt into a barrel size and made one barrel, put it aside. Then the last one was an Oloroso sherry butt cut into a barrel size and then made one barrel and we put it aside. Then we have dismantled all the barrels and then we took the staves out, put one after the other. And then on the one side, we put a New American oak with char 3 for the barrel end. On the other side, we put a French oak toast.
Yeah.
So that's how the barrel was.
The most complicated barrel in human history.
Yeah. I'm glad that, we are what do you call, minnows in terms of the muscle power and the scale of our operation coming from India. We have done it. So then the first thing is, well, you have done the barrel, very innovative. How about the whiskey? That's going to matter. We have transferred a 3-year-old bourbon matured whiskey into what I call the spectrum barrel.
Sure.
First year it was not very promising, and the second year,
what would have happened if did you get nervous thinking?
Yeah, I was nervous. I was nervous because we worked so hard to create this barrel, and then at the end of the day, you want to be successful with the product as well.
Sure.
So the second year it was way better. than the first year of maturation in the barrel. And the third year, we were like, hooray. So, and then we left that whiskey into that barrel, Spectrum barrel, for 3.5 years. So total age of the Spectrum on the first release, what I call is Spectrum 005. 005. Because it had 5 different
barrels,
staves,
5 different oak types.
Oak staves. Then it came out extremely well. I mean, it took the whiskey industry by storm. I mean, those who had a big heart to appreciate it.
Yeah. How many barrels did you make?
We have made only 5 barrels.
5 barrels.
I mean, since you are doing it as an experiment,
you don't want to do too much.
You don't know how it's going to go. And we were very happy with that. Then we had encountered a little bit of problem with the Spanish oak, which is kind of become very spongy over the years. Then we have removed the Spanish oak on the next experiment. So that's become Spectrum 004. So that comprised of New American oak, New French, PX series staves, and Oloroso series staves. Same like one side
of
on the barrel end, New American, other side is New French. And that is a little bit different than the 005, obviously. Then that barrel, I think we built only 10. Just 10 barrels.
But you doubled production.
Yeah, doubled the production.
Which is still nothing.
Nothing. Now I got 50 barrels.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So for the next
50 barrels is all maturing. When the time comes, we will bottle it.
That's exciting. And so, the Spectrum, I had mentioned that I had tasted just a nip at Whiskeys of the World last year in Houston with Raj. The problem is that night you go around, you're tasting 40 different things, and then you come and you're like, this is good whiskey. But it was my mouth was just inundated with just viscous whiskeys from the entire evening. So it was just, I remember it. I remember tasting it. I remember liking it. This is fantastic. I mean, the Amrut standard offering is delicious. I mean, 46%, which is great because typically, I've said this before on the show, a clear indication of a little bit more passion behind a product, effort put in a release is whenever they give it a little bump in proof, as opposed to just because you can make the most money by cutting it to 80.
Exactly.
And before you even taste something, when you get it from, you look at just the bottling alone, the fact that it's a little bump in proof is a clear sign that it was tailored to fit the final taste of the product. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we have started it in a hard way, learned ourselves in a very hard way. When, in fact, we started to bottle our single malt, it was, in fact, 80 proof, 40%. The very first release of Amrut single malt way back in 2004. Then we had learned it very quickly. At that time, we did use caramel coloring. I'm talking about 2004. Then I think one great quality about my team at Amrut is...
You see the canister?
Yeah.
Let me see it. While you're talking, go ahead.
So, I mean, one great thing about the Amrut team is we take constructive criticism very passionately, and we learn from our mistakes. I mean, putting caramel on a single malt whiskey is a crime as far as I am concerned now. So in 2008, we have changed our course, whereby we have beefed up the alcohol strength from 40 to 46, and then no more coloring from 2008. So I am very proud to say that none of the Amrut single malts got any artificial coloring in it. So everything that you see is natural. We know that our target segment is whiskey connoisseurs. It's not for the man on the street. So, and then there is no commercial decision behind making it like a mass product to be on the every supermarket and so on. So that's why we bottle it only at 46% to start with.
Yeah, and that's the other two that you just mentioned, the other two notes. So there's 3 things on a label, on a bottle, that tells me right away that that there's a little bit more passion behind it. And that's non-chill filtered, right? So no color. Added color, and a little bump in proof.
That's right.
Before I even taste it, I know that this is going to be not necessarily a much better product. But there's a lot more care and effort.
You got the intention.
Correct. Exactly. The intention behind the brand is an honest one, an earnest one.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely delicious. So, and at 46%, you actually mentioned on the back of the canister there that there may be some haze, but typically around that 46% mark, you should be just beyond that. But
actually, even I thought so. We had an issue that we had encountered when we bottled our 10-year-old Greedy Angels is called.
Oh, this is
that was bottled at 46% as well. So I got a complaint from a consumer in London. The bottle is full of haze. So when we looked at the bottle, there was a lot of haze. Then we have realized that our filtration is very crude. I mean,
so there was a lot of oils in it.
A lot of oils in it.
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
that overpowered the typical 90 proof.
Yeah, exactly. And you understand that. I understand that.
But the average consumer does not.
Consumer will not understand that. So then what we have done is then we have increased the filtration a bit.
A little bit.
Reduce the micron size from 15 to 10 microns now. So that basically now cleared the problem.
Yeah. So it's still got a lot of the natural oils from the cask, but you don't have to worry about having to explain to someone on some random part of the world that the haze is good as a good thing.
It's a good thing.
A good thing.
And I always tell people, if your whiskey go cloudy and if you see a lot of haze in it, when you put it into your glass and add water or something, if we go like milk, you have to drink that. You should appreciate that.
You should celebrate it.
Yeah, you should celebrate it. That's a good whiskey.
Yeah. So I'm 100% with you on board, or I'm on board with what you're saying. There was a local distillery out of North Carolina who had the same issue with, they actually left a little bit of sediment in it. So you guys have Blackadder, and the raw cask is my absolute favorite.
Yes.
Just a bottle full of tea leaves almost, and it's really just the char from the barrel. And the average consumer is not going to buy that bottle.
Correct.
But the people you want to buy that bottle will buy that, will clear the shelves of that bottle. So,
and then they're fanatics about it. So.
It's absolutely delicious, and the empty glass smell on this is just incredible.
Beautiful. Time to move on to the next one.
I typically don't move this fast through glasses, but I'd like it. Let's pour something else. I'm excited.
Yeah, you can try the multiple award-winning Amrut Fusion.
The Fusion.
Yeah, I think this guy is the one who made us to be recognized within the whiskey consumer group. And,
Whiskies of the World awards on there.
Yeah. I mean, I could not even count the number of awards this particular brand got up to date. In fact, the last edition was last week. At the Whiskies of the World, we got a gold award 4 years in a row. 4 years in a row, Whiskies of the World, gold.
That means your batches are consistent.
It's consistent. Yeah. That's what it means. Want some?
Sure.
It smells incredible. Yep. So go ahead.
I was going to say, this is the one when we first brought Amrut to America. When we first started pouring Indian single malt, everybody was like, single malt from India?
What?
Yuck. Until they tasted it. And then when we told the story about Fusion and the high awards that it got, I'll let you say that, Ashok, but that's when people really started to say, hey, there is something to this single malt. And then it would be funny when we be at whiskey events, we would pour it once to a person who was very skeptical, then they would drink it and love it, and then they'd come back with two friends, and then there'd be two more friends, and next thing you know, we'd have 20 people at the table just going, this is amazing.
Yeah, and what I love about what you guys do is you guys are very transparent. Like every bit of information you could look for about the product is on the canister, right? So where you guys distill from, how high above sea level it is, where you get your barley from, peated barley sourced from Scotland. I mean, no added color, just everything's on there. So if there's any, any snobby people, they can have their questions answered before they even taste it. And of course, I'm a huge, as many people on this show know, I'm a huge peat fan, and this is just a power peat bomb, like right in the face, and it smells incredible.
A lot of sweetness to it, though, as well.
There is a mystical complexity on this whiskey. In fact, Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible, when he rated third finest whiskey in the world in 2010, his tasting note said it took 2 days and half a bottle of whiskey to even to get to the bottom of this mystical complexity of this whiskey. He really struggled to figure out what exactly going on into the whiskey.
And he spent almost 3 days with it, just drinking.
Just understanding, and before he can give the third finest whiskey in the world award, because his reputation is at stake as well. So, the fact that he's an Indian, when you're going to say that this is the third best whiskey in the world, he wanted to be basically double and triple sure of what he was giving. We have experimented this as well. We have whiskeys made 100% from Indian barley, which we had tasted just now beforehand. And then we have the peated single malt, which is 100% made from Scottish peated barley. You taste them separately. You can mix that yourself in a glass. I'll tell you the ratio of what it is. It will not be the same as what fusion is. The extra marrying time in the barrel with the two different whiskeys creates something very unique and complex.
It's extremely complex. It's very sweet. I don't know every little thing about this. Is there some sherry aging at all that's done with this?
Not
it's
at
got
all.
kind of a sweetness to it.
Because we use virgin oak, virgin American oak as a part of our inventory, which gives lots of natural color, high dosage of vanilla and caramel.
Sure.
Often people misinterpret that as a sherry note.
Yeah, as a sweetness.
Yeah, because of the sweetness.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it is.
It's absolutely fantastic. And you can, and it's regularly, let's try that again. Readily available. You can get it almost, I've seen it. I haven't had trouble finding it on the shelf at all.
There's good
this is the largest selling whiskey in our portfolio for the obvious reasons of multiple awards it got under its belly, and the price that you pay, the amount of alcohol in it is 100 proof, and then the complexity it offers. It's kind of win-win situation for everyone.
Yeah. Super win-win. So while I get a little bit more of that same bottle, tell me about. So you are next in line. You are the assistant distiller. Yeah.
Yes.
So in about 6 months to a few years, I'm gonna have a hard time getting you back on the show. Is that what you're saying?
No, I still love my travel. So I have given a promise to my team in America that I will visit at least twice a year, if not for 4 weeks on the road, at least 2 weeks on the road, each trip. So I can still, travel, but not as much as I used to do.
Sure.
So
we have a lot more on your plate now.
I'm naturally very passionate about whiskey and what we are doing. I think that's what made me to be dragged into the production line. So my management saw that, and then they thought I would be probably the suitable person to be a successor for our master distiller Surinder. So I'm just basically getting trained under him, but I still have to go a long way.
Sure.
But I think it's the right beginning.
And that's usually not the order of operations, right? Typically, you don't normally go from that side into the production side.
From sales to production.
That's right. So since our company is a small family-owned distillery,
sure.
All of us do kind of everything. And if you look at my role, it's a kind of very typical. I do sales and marketing. I do the ambassadorial job. I buy barrels. I buy barley. And being a part of a technical team on giving input on producing new products and stuff.
Sure.
So we are all kind of trained naturally in all the aspect of the business. So that makes our life a little bit easy. So, as you rightly said, somebody who is working in sales and marketing and coming and taking over the production is something like very unique. It happened the other way around. All the master distillers will go around the world and do the ambassador job.
And that actually happens quite a bit
in
bourbon.
Richard Patterson is the one guy, he's a master blender, known very well. And I have a lot of respect for him. And he does whiskey tastings around the world. And he's been on the plane all the time.
Yeah.
So I think I'm doing the reverse, I think, here.
probably happened because, though, of your creativity overall, because a lot of the ideas for the whiskeys, they're yours and brainstorming with your team, but you seem to have this little magic about what if we did this?
What if we did this? Yeah.
What if we...
I'm of the opinion when your distillery is small, doesn't have a big muscle power, the only way out is to be innovative and create something unique. So you have to think outside the box. And
or the barrel.
And I also believe if you love what you do from your heart, the things will fall in place. And I have done whatever I have done all these days wholeheartedly from my heart with a lot of passion in it. I think that's what led me to think in a different direction.
And also, you don't have the rules and regulations, if you will, of Scotland or that history
that stubbornness
where people
of
want to
some of
be
those
very traditional, right?
Yeah, in a way, I would say, thank God we are not a Scottish distillery. Not in any negative way.
Right, but they're the Scotch Whisky Association.
Yeah, put a lot of
restrictions on innovation. There's not. I mean, I'm glad that association's in place to make sure to hold up quality.
Right.
But anytime the Scotch whiskey distillers come up with a new idea, they've got to run it by them, and oftentimes they'll just shut something down strictly because it's not traditional. That holds back. It's like the German purity laws when it comes to beer. I think the reason why American craft beer is in the place that it is now is because the German purity laws have prevented any kind of growth or natural experimentation out of sheer stubbornness for historical,
lineage.
Yeah. I mean, now we've got all these great. You can make beer with anything. You can make it with. I know that Brendan teased last week about how you can brew a beer. Brew it 3 times through an old gem sock and serve it out of a boot, but
and call it craft.
and call it craft beer. But I love that idea. That's what's great about Indian whiskey is you guys don't have these stubborn mentalities.
I mean, even if you say we have stubborn rules and regulations, like for example SWA. If you look at the way how, for example, Spectrum was made. We haven't broken any rules, even as per Scotch Whisky Association as well. What it says, you got to basically mature your whiskey in a oak barrel. It doesn't say that you cannot mix different staves in a barrel. I didn't put anything inside my barrel. I didn't put any extra piece or anything like that. The whole barrel is constructed with oak wood of different type.
Sure.
Right? And so if you look at the regulation, we haven't broken anything.
Right. But even with that being said, the Scotch Whisky Association, when distilleries have proposed aging in tequila barrels made with oak, they're not breaking any rules. And the Scotch Whisky Association didn't want it to happen. So it's this thing where even if you guys are upholding all the standards that are meant for quality, you guys don't have to deal with these old ego-driven guys who refuse to allow for innovation.
Yeah, that's true. From that perspective, yes, I think we are lucky. Yeah,
because I mean, you guys are. This is a quality single malt over and over and over again. There's nothing wrong with this. You're extremely transparent about every aspect of what you're making, and who's going to complain about that?
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what's next on the agenda here? While I finish this last beautiful sip of fusion,
I would go for a Madeira finish,
so
which is not even released into the market
not here yet.
You are the first person in
the U.S.
No,
in Texas,
in Houston.
Houston.
We've been to 2 other cities.
Oh, that's right. You went to Dallas and Austin.
But you are the first.
So you can't blame us for that.
First guy in Houston. Yeah. Okay, I'll take it.
Houston. Yeah. A brand new bottle as well.
Yeah.
Brand new bottle. When is this supposed to? Is it coming here at all? Any location for Texas?
It should be here in about a month. Yeah, it'll be here in about a month. Do you want some? A little bit?
Jen is basically buying time. So I'm telling 3 weeks, he's saying a month.
And what's the story on this one here?
First time we have tried with the Madeira barrels, Madeira hogshead. We haven't tried with this kind of wine cask before. As usual.
Ooh, that's a heavy wine.
Yeah.
It's tasty. So first time with this?
Yeah, first time with this.
You made how many bottles?
We have bottle only 4,800 bottles worldwide. I think United States got 1,200 bottles allocation. I mean, as I told you, in the case of Spectrum, we are trying with the Madeira Hogshead for the first time. So I don't know how things are going to go. So we bought only 20 barrels. Fortunately or unfortunately, it came out well.
Again.
Yeah, it came out well.
Yeah, it came out well. Now I'm already hunting for good quality old Madeira Hogshead barrels. So we will produce a bigger batch on the next
Eventually,
time.
Yeah. And just to give some perspective here, in the bourbon world, the standard for limited editions is usually 30,000. So like Wild Turkey Decades, 30,000 bottles of that limited edition release. America saw 1,000 bottles of this. That's a pretty limited batch.
Very limited.
I often say, like, in my opinion, if I say limited edition, it should not cross like 10,000-15,000 bottles max for a worldwide release.
Yeah, and Highland Park, I think a lot of their limited editions around 30,000. The Highland Park Ice, the Fire, which is great. I mean, that's still limited in a world of billions, right?
Yeah.
But that's pretty hard. So what was... So you don't know what Texas is getting in the way of allocation, right? I need to start hitting up mom and pop stores now for when it finally does hit. When are we expecting it? Do we know?
I have no idea what the allocation is going to be for Texas. And I've already promised 2 people, one in Austin, one in Dallas, and I gave them my email address as well.
Yeah.
So they are going to fire me with the email, and then I'm going to fire you back.
Yeah. So I am.
We'll
let me be your
on
Houston guy bugging you.
Yeah.
So you'll have 3. No, it's. I know it seems like such a superficial praise coming from me. I'm just such I only have, we've only done 28 episodes, 29 episodes of the show. The vast, 95% of them are people I've been dying to just sit and discuss. Like, I'm such a huge fan of what Amrut's doing. I'm a huge fan of Paul John as well. I just think it's just good Indian whiskey. And I like seeing somewhere outside of Japan or Scotland see a little love, We mentioned Brenne, which I think was a great French single malt, but they only have 2 expressions. The idea that you guys are pumping out, I'm looking at 6 different bottlings here, and no pun intended, but the spectrum of what I'm seeing is just fantastic. And this has got a little peat in there too, as well, a little peated.
There is no peat added to this. It has a very slight tannin.
Maybe some of the fusion left over from the glass.
Probably that's a possibility.
But there is just a little phenolic note in there.
Yeah, probably coming from the glass. I don't know. It's initially matured in a bourbon barrel for 3 years. After that, it was matured in first fill Madeira Hogsheads.
Okay. And on the label here, it looks like it says Virgin Oak, Oloroso, Madeira, Port Pipe.
That's basically the label. It's a kind of, if you look at the label here, it's saying a special edition.
Oh, sure.
And then you have a Madeira
I see.
Those are all the
it's going to be a common label. So next time when I basically bottle, say, a Oloroso special edition. So
okay, I see. So it's all the special
So that's why I just
editions.
like everything put together.
Yeah.
It's like a watermark.
Gotcha. The only other Madeira I've had was Lefroy. They did a Carchus last year? No, 2 years ago. 2 years ago, because last year was the cask strength. But the Madeira is the only other one I've had was theirs. And I've always, to me, the wine finished single malt is some of the best out there. And it's very versatile. You can have bourbon drinkers when you want to introduce them to Scotch. Wine finish or wine matured is a nice segue from that bourbon sweetness to that single malt sweetness.
I just had a Belle Meade Madeira finish last night.
Those are really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Chris. Chris Jones is the national brand manager. Brand that might not be his exact
Sales
title,
manager or something.
but we're doing a barrel of Belle Meade this year. It's supposed to be here in December, but bourbon doing finishes is a kind of a newer thing, relatively new. I mean, really, a couple years ago, 3-4 years ago, there was only like a few brands doing. Angel's Envy does the port port barrels.
But you cannot call it as a bourbon, right? If you do that.
So technically it's not bourbon anymore, but a lot of people don't understand how that works. So the way the TTB they allow you to put the process on the label. But by explaining the process, it's a little bit misleading almost. So even though you're being transparent, it comes off as misleading. So they can take bourbon and they can say, Kentucky straight bourbon finished in Madeira barrels.
Okay, got it.
So it's no longer bourbon anymore.
Yeah.
You've got additives in there. It's no longer a fresh barrel and the whole 9 yards. So by allowing that to be on the label, people think it's still bourbon, even though it's really not bourbon anymore. No, that doesn't mean it's a bad product. It still tastes delicious,
correct,
know, because single malt's been doing it for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? There's no complaint there. It's not technically bourbon anymore, but Belle Meade is probably probably one of the biggest innovators of sherry finished bourbon. Yeah, finishes. And I'm a fan of the product. Like I said, we just bought a barrel. It's supposed to be here in October. Good whiskey's good whiskey.
Yes.
And if you're transparent, I have no complaint. You know what I mean? It's when you kind of throw some fluffery in there that doesn't make sense that people get all upset.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I really want to move on, and I know we're limited on time, but I don't want to dump this glass. Let me get a fresh one. And you'll be pouring all these tonight at Whiskeys of the World?
We are pouring these.
Whiskeys of the World Houston happening tonight. This will air next week, so it's a little late. Here you go.
You've already missed it by the time this program arrives.
I'm sure our group is very well aware of the event. We'll all be there.
I've still got some of this.
This is the Narangi.
Want a new glass?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. So what's the story here? It looks like I'm seeing an orange.
Orange, yeah.
How do you say it? Narangi?
Narangi. Yeah.
Narangi?
Yeah.
Amrut orange, basically.
Yeah.
What's the story there?
Right. So.
Super innovation. We'll cap it by this.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, this is interesting. I just jumped ahead. I know what it is.
Yeah, you know what it is. Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead though. Explain it for the audience.
So we wanted to basically get quite a bit of citrus note into the whiskey, although we have orangey citrus as one of the key characteristics in our regular single malt. I particularly like citrus a lot. So what we did is we got a full barrel of Oloroso sherry.
Full barrel
of Oloroso sherry wine from Spain. And we have a region called Coorg. It's about 220 kilometers south of Bangalore, where the distillery is. We grow a very local orange called Coorg Orange, which got a green color skin to it.
Okay.
And a very thick skin as well. So we got those oranges from...
Really resilient peels.
Yeah. So we got those oranges from that region. So we took the peel from the oranges and put it into the wine, the Oloroso
So
wine.
not the whiskey, the wine. So you had a full barrel of sherry.
Oloroso sherry.
And you put the peels
in. Into the wine, let it mature in the barrel for 2.5 years, roughly. And then afterwards, we have... So the orange peel leaches a lot of oils.
A lot of oils
into the wine. And then the wine is obviously getting coated inside the barrel surface. So we have completely removed everything from the barrel. Both
so
the peel,
2 years maturation in the barrels with the sherry.
With the sherry and orange peel. So we have removed everything from the barrel. Then transferred a 3-year-old matured, bourbon matured single malt into this orange sherry barrel.
3-year-old bourbon matured single malt. And then put it in the barrel after you dumped out the orange peels and the sherry.
Right. Yeah. And then we let it sit in this, what I call is an orange sherry cask for about 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Orange sherry cask?
Yeah.
So for another 3 years?
Yeah.
Okay,
so that's what you got now. So you get that like sweetness from the Oloroso sherry cask, of course.
The nose on it's incredible.
Yeah. It's like a Christmas pudding, isn't it? Like when you... have a Christmas pudding, the spices
and stuff. Pudding, definitely. Yeah. I smell. Oh, it smells great. And you said Coorg orange? Coorg? How do you say it? Coorg?
Yeah.
You could smell the. It's almost like you smell the peel. Like if you bend a peel and it sprays the.
Yeah, the oils.
That's oil, orange oil.
All right, I'll taste it if you ask me to.
He's forcing himself to have a little sip.
Wow.
And you see the mid
ton
palate,
of
like
orange.
a lot of citrus, and then perhaps when we were children, we end up with biting the orange peel. You get that spicy and refreshing taste on your tongue. That also you get that at the.
It's very refreshing. It's very bright,
Yeah.
but it's still got some heavy Christmas flavors. Those dark.
Christmas fella is raisins and sultanas.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the typical note that you can expect from sherry. So.
Oh.
And that was chosen by Whiskey Advocate as
the World Whiskey of the Year last year.
Oh, really?
In 2017.
World Whiskey of the Year. Mm-hmm. So it's already out then, obviously.
Again, very limited.
The U.S. gets robbed sometimes, man. I'm telling you, it drives me nuts. Foursquare is one of the best rum distilleries in Barbados, and trying to get their stuff here is a nightmare. Yeah. And you hear about these award-winning single malts overseas, and I'm like, why isn't it in Houston? We go nuts for it.
This is not that bad. We had produced 6,000 bottles. Not bad.
That's still extremely limited. That's nothing.
Yeah. For me, it's a limited edition anyway. So
we are getting more. We are getting a little bit more.
Turn this into a little body
spray.
Yeah, it's got such a bright citrus note to it. It kind of reminds me of this is going to sound super cheesy, but it reminds me of like a hot summer day lunch in the park, just that bright. So my wife's making some good tea. Yeah. Growing up, we were so poor. We just had country time lemonade, powdered Kool-Aid, and tea. Now my wife, she'll throw in cucumbers and orange peels, and it's got like this bright summer kind of a tea note.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
So what are we looking at as far as suggested retail range pricing? Like if someone were to go looking for the Amrut single malt, the core workhorse, the 94.5 points in Whiskey Bible. I mean,
this will be about the classic single malt. It'll be around the region of $55, I guess. $55.
Okay. And the Fusion?
And the Fusion will be about 70, I guess.
70.
That's about right.
75.
Yeah.
Limited editions are expensive for the reason that the circus that we have to do with bringing the wine and marrying.
Sure, the amount of effort put into the Narangi alone is...
Narangi will be what, $125?
About $135.
$125.
That's still nothing.
Yeah.
We were talking about how bourbon has kind of priced itself out of the category, I think, before we started recording.
I mean, our pricing policy is
120 is
very
extremely
consistent
reasonable.
Right from the beginning. We don't want to be competing with the blended whiskeys, and on the other hand, we won't be super expensive. It is affordable.
It's extremely affordable. 120 is a great price.
Yeah.
There's no complaint there whatsoever.
And even the Spectrum, that was again World Whiskey in
I have underpriced it. So
the amount of effort there, you definitely
it was only
it.
selling for, I think, a retail was $150.
But it's a black market, secondary market is
I
was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. So I mean, all the limited editions are already. I mean, somebody bought Spectrum, an Amrut collector, for £500 a bottle of the first
500
release.
pounds a bottle.
Yeah, not 005. They got it for £500 a bottle because we had only 1,000 bottles on the first release, right?
Right.
So people have gone nuts.
So I'll say this, and we're quickly running out of time. I know you guys have to go. Just because one guy is willing to do that, please don't raise your
raise your prices.
There's a thing in the bourbon world where a lot of bourbon distilleries are keeping an eye on these secondary markets to kind of gauge how to price their releases, and I think that's part of the problem. Bourbon has now caught up with the only reason why single malts are so much more expensive here is because you've got to go through import tax and a forced 3-tier system. So I've heard many people say that Scotch or single malts is a rich man's game. It's really not. There's so many great. I mean, Glenmorangie, just to give a little insight on how this works, $45. Once you take out the retails, 25-30%, the distributors. I mean, you're talking about they're only making $12-15 a bottle. Bourbon is now they're taking a piece from the Facebook world and seeing these secondary markets, and then they're deciding, okay, we're going to put out this 10-year-old whiskey, and it's going to be $150. It's getting to the point where people are now noticing it's good for all spirits on the wide spectrum of things, because now people are seeing other stuff to look at. Rum,
Yes, exactly.
rum is great right now.
Yeah.
And you guys started with rum,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I did want to taste that before we leave.
Yeah.
I've never tasted the rum. So you guys started with rum and moved on to single malts and have grown quite a bit. Tell me a little bit about the rum.
The one we are going to taste now is the Amrut 2 Indies rum. As the name suggests, we are the East Indies and the Caribbean are the West Indies. So we had made rum from jaggery, which is basically nothing but you crush the sugarcane juice, reduce it, and thicken it, and you make a big ball. After taking the moisture out, with putting in a cloth, you squeeze the moisture out. That's what jaggery is. So we use a lot of them for our cooking in India. So we have dissolved the jaggery, fermented it, and then distilled it in a pot still, matured it in a bourbon barrel, and this is blended with the rums imported from the Caribbean, and that's why we call it as a 2 Indies. It's basically
both the East and West Indies.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, that's the great thing about rum nowadays is it's working its way. I mean, there were some, expensive rums. The process is very involved, and the angel share is extremely high. But it's such a great, I say menu, a great vast menu of offerings between rum, single malt, and bourbon. You're going to find your comfort zone. And you guys are doing 2 of the 3. I mean, you can't legally make bourbon, but are there? So let me ask you this, and we'll move on because I know you guys really have to go. What's next in the pipeline that you're allowed to talk about? Like, what's the next peek into the...
We have pretty much touched the major areas of whiskey making in general.
Sure.
So there is one in the pipeline, couple. I'm not sure whether I'm going to release it next year or not. I'm a little bit conservative about it.
Okay.
So that's going to be interesting.
Okay.
I can tell you to that extent.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I won't poke you too much further. I always ask that question. It's very rare that we get people like yourself in here. So I wouldn't be doing everyone justice if I didn't at least poke you a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you can ask it. I would love to, because it's going to be really awesome. So.
Is this available here? I haven't seen this.
It is available, and the price will stun you. It's under $25 on the shelf.
Yeah, that's just
an amazing rum.
So I say this is good enough to sip, cheap enough to mix.
Yeah. It's a good punchline. Yeah. You should put it on the bottle. Listen, thank you so much for being here today. That was extremely fast. I mean, we got through this. You guys were amazing. I'm going to be there tonight. I'm going to probably spend some time at your table.
Excellent.
So, guys, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for inviting us.
Cheers, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
I drank all mine.
You drank all yours. I didn't.